Hi, Jim.
Can you hear me, Carrie?
I can. Yep.
Your voice is very low, but wait a minute. That
Oh,
was all me. Now I hear you.
okay.
That was just my volume.
Oh, all right. Okay, good. How you doing? Okay.
Good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm
And
glad we got a jump in registrations.
oh, good,
And I
good.
put it on Facebook that we're going to be live. So hopefully we'll have a few more jump.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I'm going to do this yet. I think I'm going to get on Facebook on my phone, so I'll be able to kind of moderate both.
Okay.
So let's hope it works. I've never done it.
Well, I'm counting on you for all the technology there.
Okay.
And I'll be able to just, as in a typical Zoom call, I can just do the screen share and
Yes.
move my own slides by this. Okay.
Yep.
Um,
Do you
can
want
I
to do
have,
that right now so we can make sure it's all working?
yep, and I'll have a quick question for you too, I think. I'm gonna check share computer sound because time willing, there's a 3-minute video clip I might share, okay?
Oh, okay.
So I'm just, let me see how that might work. And so, are you seeing it all right there?
Yep. Looks good.
All right, let me try something here. Quick, I actually.
Yeah, so sometimes you in the more column, you'll want to say that you're going to share your sound too.
Oh, so that people will turn up. Now you're gonna mute everybody from your side though?
Yes. Yeah, everybody's
Okay.
muted.
I have a lot of memories from when I
Can
was
you
a
hear that
child.
all right?
One that's always stuck out to me, though, was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school.
Yep.
And you can hear that. Have you seen this video clip?
No.
Oh, I hope we have time then. I think you'll like it a lot. So let me, I want to unshare now if I can figure out how to do that. Stop share. So that should work out. Okay, so I'll just let people know when I'm doing that because well, they should have their sound on anyways, right? Or is that something different?
No, they'll be able to hear it.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're sharing your sound
Great.
as well as the video.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as you click that on, that I learned that the hard way.
And then what I'm gonna do, let's see if this works. Hang on, I might have to check something else again. Well, I guess that will work all right. Let me escape from this for a minute so I can see you. So that should work out. I think that'll work out fine. And I'll just, I'll kind of breeze through the material in 45 minutes because you want to leave about at least 15 minutes for any kind of
for questions. Yeah.
Will you be monitoring a chat box too?
Yes. Yeah.
Also, okay. So I'll sort of
so
encourage.
This is, this is the webinar format that we're doing.
Right. So
meeting. So people will be chatting or they will enter it in the Q&A, which both of those I'll be monitoring.
Okay. What technically is the difference between a chat box and Q&A? Because I use the chat box for that purpose in my regular meeting.
It's just an element of the Zoom webinar. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's many. I mean, you can also poll people, but you can do that in the meeting too. So I'm not really sure. But the biggest difference you're going to see is that you're not going to be seeing everybody.
Right. Now, will we still be, if for something, if there's some glitch and I'm not coming across, I'll be able to hear your voice though, or you'll be able to let me know if we've got
So
a technical issue.
Yeah, I'm here. So it will be your picture and my picture, except I'll put the ARC logo on, so you won't,
Okay.
we'll only look at you. So I
Well,
really,
but their screen is going to be with most, so my picture would just be little. It's not going to get,
exactly.
they're not going to be
You're-
watching me speak. They're going to be really my voice over the slides.
Well, no, your
maybe a little
picture's gonna
picture.
be on there too, but
But a little, right,
but
just
but
small.
on the side, it won't be a
Yeah,
big
okay.
picture. Yeah, it won't be a full screen. Your PowerPoint will be the full screen. And then, so I liked this for, because, I think people paid more attention because there's less distraction.
If it was a small group, I might opt for the other things so that there could be
Yes,
helpful interruptions. But for this, I think
yes.
it's
If you
better
want
to
this,
better to
if you
breeze
want
through it and
active
ask people to
discussion-
save their comments and questions till the end.
Yeah.
So,
if you want active discussion, yeah. I mean, I can make people a panelist, and when I make people a panelist, their picture does show up. And but that's unless I really have to do that, I that's all a little new for me. So I'd rather kind of keep it this way if we can.
yeah.
And we can play with it if it's. And I'm learning more every time I do it. So how to.
Try not to surprise me too much.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this, the way it was done, because I think, you paid more attention to what was actually being said in the PowerPoint. And, it was because I'm always like, ooh, who's on, looking at the pictures, looking at the names. Oh, look at that, and I'm not always paying attention, but that's just my little ADD problem. But
should I be as you get ready in a few minutes, should I just should I have the screen share set up now so that
I
when
would.
you're okay?
Yeah.
I'll go back to doing that. And there we are, you and
There
me.
we are. So yeah, and then I'm going to be gone once. I'll just be the ARC logo once you start, and so it'll just be your picture, the ARC logo, and your screen in the PowerPoint.
Fine, and you'll do is everybody coming directly in, or are you letting them in from a waiting room?
There's a waiting room, I believe, so I'll take care of all that.
All right, and then will you be doing a quick introduction, or just at least give me a
Yes.
thumbs up when you want me to start? Okay.
Yep.
I'll have another beer then while I'm waiting.
What's that?
I said, I'll have another beer while I'm waiting. If I did, that would be my first today, so not to worry. My son Luke works at a big warehouse. He's in the Teamsters Union. I'll be sharing. It's actually, this slide is Luke's.
Ah,
He works in a liquor distribution warehouse in Taunton. And they've been pushing lots of liquor during the pandemic. I got to tell you.
imagine. I've heard that liquor stores have done very well.
They have that and kayak sales and bicycle shops, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that the pandemic has actually been helpful for. So
No, I know it. I see it, so many more people walking too, which is
Yeah.
nice. And families
nice.
walking, taking walks together, and
Yep.
yeah, so there's been some nice things. Yeah, so I guess I don't have to let people in because somebody just joined.
Okay.
And so I didn't have to let her in. So that's good. Yeah, so we got 3 more minutes. People usually hop on at the very last minute, so.
again, I'll just wait for your cue. Can we be heard now, Carrie, by folks or not? Are we together?
Oh yeah, we're being heard. Yep.
did talk to Leo, by the way. I don't mind this being overheard about trying to have our project. I've got some ideas of more stuff that's really sort of family oriented. So you and I may have an opportunity to talk more at some point. You know, today's presentation is a little out of most of the work that we're doing at this point. It's with adults, but I would love for us to get back early on in our project. Our primary audience advance an invitation for trainings with special ed packs. So, you know, and a lot of presentations from Mass Families Organizing for Change.
Yeah.
That of thing. So that's a group I think you know, try to that's some of the work I'd really like to try to emphasize more going forward. And if so, I think we'll intersect more with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I can give you a few places that do ongoing trainings that may be helpful to connect with. All
As we
right.
get our friends related library, you know, posted on the website, those contacts might want to have access to it.
Okay, everybody's jumping on. Awesome. We got one more minute.
Okay, then I'll be right back. I realized I could not see my clock when the PowerPoint was up. So, ripped the kitchen clock off my wall. So.
All righty. Okay, so well, welcome everybody. It's 3 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Mahoney, and if you don't mind, I am just going to click on. Let's have it live on Facebook. Hold on, share to a group. All right, well, that's going on. I want to welcome you today to the ARC of Massachusetts webinar series. My name is Carrie Mahoney, and I'm going to be your moderator for this session. And I'm thrilled to have today Jim Ross, who is director of our Widening the Circle Pathways project. And Jim is actually, he's a very seasoned, you know, professional and parent, and has been doing this for quite a long time. And you'll note that Jim has an incredible passion for, you know, relationships and friendships. And his life has actually been a very big example of the value of having people with disabilities and people without disabilities in relationships and friendships. So at this point, I'm going to have Jim take it away. Just wanted to let you know if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box and we'll be visiting them at the end of the session. So welcome.
Thank you, Carrie, very much. And it's good to not quite see everybody who's on this particular call. I'll tell you one thing I don't have a passion for is Zoom. Although just like everybody else, I've been forced to kind of live it in both my professional and personal life for the last 8 or 9 months. This is a very interesting topic to me. And so again, just as a reminder for those of you who are on this, that we're talking about building friendships at school during challenging times. And we have spent some time, especially early in our Widening the Circle project, on the topic of friends at school. And the slide that you can see in front of you right now is the cover of one of our 4 toolkits. These are available for free on our on the ARC website. So you can get in there and download this particular one, which is on the core part of our topic today, was produced some years ago. The principal writer is Zach Rossetti from Boston University. And it was done prior to the pandemic. So many of the tips and strategies that are contained in this particular toolkit are most usable when people are able to physically get together, which is not quite the case as it is right now, which is the purpose for devising this simple presentation that we are going to be doing today. But I would encourage people to go ahead and get that toolkit, download it, and refer to it. If you are primarily parents who are on this call, it might make a nice gift to some of the teachers in the school systems if you have children in school. And the toolkit, by the way, is broken up into sections, so it covers from elementary school section and a middle school section and a high school section, but also covers college, an option that is increasingly available to our kids with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including kids like my son, Luke. And Luke has given me permission and has helped build this particular slide. Luke is the young man who appears in all 6 of these pictures. And to help set the stage for today's presentation, I want to read some excerpts from the Schwally Family Scholarship essay that Luke wrote when he was actually in a freshman year of college up at the University of Maine in Fort. And this was, if you have if any of your sons or daughters, if you're on this call, or if you're a teacher and have students in high school who are on the autism spectrum and are interested in pursuing secondary, post-secondary education, the Schwally Family Scholarship is still available through the Organization for Autism Research, OAR. And so you might want to check into that to see if there's, what. Here is some excerpts from Luke's scholarship winning essay. I don't like to talk about my Asperger's syndrome. I don't think of it as a disability. I think of it as a gift. And recently, though, he adds, I don't mind telling others that I have it because sooner or later it comes out and it's part of who I am, but it's not all of it. To continue with his essay, my family has always supported me to have a normal life. College was harder than I thought it would be. Started out studying forestry, but that wasn't working out. I sometimes have a hard time concentrating, which is not good when you're running around in the wet woods with a chainsaw. I have lots of interests. I like fishing and the outdoors. I did an internship during my senior year of high school with the National Park Service, and I helped to get one of our rivers protected in the National Wild and Scenic Rivers Program. I believe in conservation and recycling. I was the youngest person ever officially appointed to a town committee in Rainham when I went onto the recycling committee at the age of 10. I love music and I play the ukulele. And sometimes at open mic at Rick's Music World, I joke that it's a ukulele. But what I like most is sports, especially baseball. In my last year of high school, I was the pitcher for my regular high school team. We had a perfect season. We lost every single game. Self-confidence, self-knowledge, support from allies, determination, and inclusive opportunities enhance the chances of friendship. And a touch of good humor doesn't hurt. And much of this can happen through school. School really is important. This is a picture that's taken out at Holyoke Community College out in Western Mass. And I just want to read a little introduction section to the Friends at School toolkit. School is by definition a place of learning. It is where most of us learn to read and write and add and subtract. It's where we first learn about biology and history and foreign languages. It may be the first place where we pick up a baseball or sketch with charcoal or play the trombone or act a part on a stage. School is also where we learn and practice our social skills. How do we relate with teachers? How do we get along in a class with other students our age? How do we know what's okay to do and what's not okay? What do we do when we don't agree with somebody? What do we do when we notice someone is left out? What do we do when we're feeling left out? School is where we often first begin that dance that can result in friendships. This dance is more difficult for some than others, including many students with disabilities, and it's up to all of us, teachers, paraprofessionals, parents, and fellow students, to be sure that no one is left out, because friendships are too important to be ignored. Friendships between and among students with and without disabilities benefit everyone. school really is different now, isn't it, folks? And the pandemic has demanded that we teach differently than we have before. I want to put in a little plug here that even though my kids are out of school at this point, and I have 7 of them, my life has been pretty directly impacted by what's going on in the school systems at this point. My oldest granddaughter is a kindergarten kid, and she has stutter stepped into kindergarten in her school district because the school has been closed down a couple of times due to surges in the in pandemic stuff. I worry about what her future will be because of so much that she's missing out on. And my wife is a first grade teacher in the Easton Public School System, right here in southeastern Massachusetts where we live. And boy, to be trying to see her teaching part of the class each day that's in their seats in her classroom, while the other half is on their screens, and she's teaching them simultaneously. And some of the kids are in class just part of the week, but some kids, depending on their circumstances, are in class almost every day. It's a real challenge for them. I know also what a challenge it is for the parents who are sometimes forced to have to uproot their entire life in order to accommodate their kids at home. And parents are often ill-equipped and ill-prepared to be the kind of the co-teachers or the paraprofessionals for their own students. And students themselves have had to figure out how to keep learning in settings that may not be as conducive for education and are certainly a whole lot less conducive to the kind of connections that we'd like to see between our kids and their other kids in their schools. Clearly, there are lots more obstacles to supporting friendships among students with and without disabilities in times of isolation, physical distancing, and virtual learning. Physical separation, for instance, and fewer students in a classroom may reduce the opportunities for connections. Families, we certainly see this in my wife's school system, and it may be the same where you folks live, that some families and students just don't have the same accesses to devices and services that are necessary to effectively keep up with both the educational and the social aspects typically offered through our school systems. And some students, especially some students with disabilities, are just simply not as adept at effectively using devices for either learning or connecting socially. I will have to add that some students with disabilities are extraordinarily capable of connecting and using the technology that we have today. Many of our sons and daughters and grandchildren and students, that is not the case. So we just want to, we just obviously have to recognize that the school opportunities for social connections are very different than they have been in the past. Despite these challenges, creating opportunities for friendships between students with and without disabilities remain incredibly important. In this Friends at Schools toolkit, Dr. Rossetti identified a number of specific benefits, for making friends at school. And you can read about them in detail in the toolkit itself. But they include such things as there's a whole lot of personal benefits that students and adults alike are happier when they have friends. And having a friend leads to emotional well-being, sense of belonging, and opportunities for social integration and better communication. It facilitates developmental gains. Those students with disabilities who are connected with their fellow students in their classrooms are able to grow better. Leads to more positive school outcomes. One of the biggies in my mind is that for kids with disabilities in their school systems who are able to connect in deep and meaningful ways with their peers without disabilities have a little bit of an extra inoculation against the bullying that can go on in school. And believe me, a lot of bullying that goes on online as well. So anything that we can do that's going to try to help connect our students with and without disabilities is going to really help those kids avoid the kind of abuse that comes with bullying. And it's really important to point out that these friendships that we're talking about, that they are reciprocal, and these friendships enrich the lives and of the whole classroom community. This is not just something nice for kids with disabilities. This picture, this is not just something good for Samantha. This is something good for Samantha and her friends. And the time may be right for us, even during, maybe even especially because of these pandemic times, for us to put put our foot on the gas and really try to help make some of these connections. The pandemic has thrust some level of isolation on nearly everyone in the world. And perhaps this will encourage many to empathize more deeply with people who have been nearly and largely isolated and lonely all of their lives. And maybe some of these people will be willing to step forward and personally engage those who have been deeply lonely in personal ways that will benefit everyone. So what can we do? What can we do in these times right now when people have been physically separated to try to help make sure that our kids don't get any further behind in terms of social connections than they may have already been? And Zach Rossetti suggests several things. Just want you to keep in mind as we go through our simple presentation here today, is that one of the things that we want to do is we really want to develop a friendship mindset, that we want to pay close attention. We want to be thinking constantly about the quantity and quality of the social opportunities that may come their way in the in-class settings as well as in the virtual settings. Just because students are attending school online does not mean that there aren't things that we can do that help tie them closer together. But we've got to believe in these friendships. Anybody on this call today that really thinks that people with and without disabilities don't have a place together in this world, then you're on the wrong call. And I think you need to do some soul searching. And in our project, when we talk about peers, yes, my son Luke has peers who are on the autism spectrum, but his peer group is much larger. Right now, his peer group are other 32-year-olds, who are interested in nature and recycling and the walk for hunger and all these other kinds of things that are important to him. That's his peer group. And I encourage you as parents to make sure that your minds are set in such a way that you identify the broader world as the place for your sons and daughters. So there are some things, obviously, that we need to consider right now because of the pandemic being in the surge. And of course, we need to make sure that for children and adults, that we are staying physically distances from each other whenever possible. But that still, can allow a lot of different kind of activities. There's the mantra of the frequent hand washing, of course, and the wearing of masks. And by the way, some of them can be customized to accentuate what are the positive aspects of your son and daughter. Keeping in small groups, preferably with the same people, is another strategy that obviously the healthcare professionals are touting. Being outside as much as possible, as these two young men are demonstrating. But within these restrictions, there are a number of strategies that we may want to use that enhance the chances of connecting students with and without disabilities in deep and meaningful ways. And in no particular of importance, I want to just start ticking through some of these, which some of you folks may know a lot more about than I do. Social emotional learning. This is something that I think is probably embedded in all of the schools, the systems that your sons and daughters go to. It's a process through which children understand and manage emotions. They set and achieve positive goals. They feel and show empathy for others. They establish and maintain positive relationships. They make responsible decisions. This is all core kind of stuff for relationship building. You are going to be, I'm pretty sure that Carrie is going to be sending out to each and every one of you these slides. And so this has if you take the slides when you receive them, you can go to the bottom of this one and you get a nice little video clip that kind of describes, and for those of you who aren't familiar with SEL, what it's like. And in talking with some of the people in school systems about, well, how are you able to adapt the social emotional learning stuff that you've been doing in the classrooms to online learning? I've gotten a few things, from people like they've set up some people are calling virtual lunch bunches, which have been kind of fun, and game time online that involves multiple students in there, and more interaction during morning meeting, even when it's virtual. And I encourage you folks, I don't know if you're using a chat box or if it's a Q&A feature on this Zoom call, but if any of you have any ideas about how during these trying pandemic times, what kind of things might be able to be done to still further the social emotional learning of our children, please share them, and those can be shared either at the end of this call, or Carrie can help collect any comments that people have and share them with folks afterwards. But social emotional learning is a pretty important piece in most schools that can be used. Another thing that really should be used, to an even greater extent around the social stuff, is your students' IEPs. You'll notice that there's a link at the bottom of this slide that you're going to get, and that will bring you actually to our website, on which we have a some guidance on how to use your son's or daughter's individualized education plan to best effect to promote social opportunities and friendships, because the IEP is not just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It also does include the opportunity for social goals, something that's just so critically important for all of our children. I want to make sure that people look at that. And I also want to invite again into the chat box or Q&A, if any of you have been able to successfully use the IEP process to promote social opportunities and relationships and friendships for your son and daughter, please share something with the other people who are on this Zoom meeting today. This has been interesting for me, thinking about friendships, as the different schools have been putting together the cohorts, which have obviously been an essential part of dealing with ways of reducing the potential spread of the coronavirus as schools were reopening. And so there's been some thought given, and it might be too late because the school year has already started, but there may be some really good ways to make sure that the cohorts are put together so that they contribute more to connecting and friendships and social opportunities. And so some of the things that have been suggested for that are that care should be taken in first establishing the cohorts to be sure not to lump, if this comment is not going to work if your child is in a segregated school setting. But if they are in the public schools, making sure that the cohort is not made up of all kids with disabilities. So to spread kids with and without disabilities across the cohorts and create as much diversity in those small groups as you can. That should really help in terms of the stuff that we're pursuing. Students without disabilities who have demonstrated qualities before of including their classmates should be identified to be included in some of those cohorts, especially if that cohort includes a kid with a pretty significant disability. And I can remember when my daughter, Amy, was in elementary school, and she was identified, and she still is as an adult and a mother right now, one of those people who is just wonderful at being able to see when somebody's on the outside of things and bring them into the conversation and bring them into the groups. And so even as a pretty young student, we would get calls at the beginning of the school year as her parents asking if it was, did we mind if our daughter was in the inclusion classroom? So not because she needed the inclusion for academic purposes, but because she was such a good friend, a good mentor, a good person at trying to connect folks. So making sure that the cohort has a composition of students in that will be able to make the whole group work. If sometimes a socially compatible group has been identified in a previous school year, and that might be a good idea then for that group to be as a cohort for the next school year. And finally, it may also be one of the strategies you might want to think about is having the in-school cohort. And by the way, these cohorts would probably, at least in my wife's school, would be in class some of the time, and they would be taught online, so virtually at other times. But if the cohorts included people, students who lived in the same neighborhoods or lived near each other, and that way there may be ways, well, for instance, one of the big bugaboos it seems for schools right now is the transportation issue. But if you have all the students from the same neighborhood coming in together and they're in the same cohort, that may cut down some of the concerns about transmission, as well as maybe increasing the opportunities for kids to be able to stay connected when they are not at school on the weekends and and back in their neighborhoods. And clearly they may not be able to connect in the neighborhoods in the same way as they were before the pandemic, but there's still lots of things that they can do together in safe ways, virtually across the lawns, et cetera, on weekends and after schools and on vacations. So that's just something, just give some thought to how to use these cohorts. Another thing that we've recognized a lot, and this is, you'll see down at the bottom of this that there is a citation to Castle, which is just look it up if you need to, but it's a really good resource, and they do a lot of stuff on the SEL. But they have recognized, as have many others, that it's not just the teachers in school that may play a very important role in trying to help connect kids with and without disabilities. Matter of fact, there's probably other positions in school who are working, but are either in activities or they have time where things are not quite as structured, and they may be able in a position to help actually exert more successful effort into connecting our kids with disabilities. So some of our the support professionals, the paraprofessionals, the bus drivers, the lunch aides, I know that the school monitors, and I know that a lot of that stuff is not being in place right now. I don't know how other schools are doing it, but my my wife's students are all taking their lunch at their own desks, so there's not as many opportunities to connect right now. But as things start to open up, please keep these people in mind. And I'm remembering right now that in the early days of our Widening the Circle project, we had some money where we were funding some projects. We wanted people, these were demonstration projects of different ways of connecting people with and without disabilities. And one of the things that and two of our grants went to school systems, and they ended up being for after school programs, which were fine. But we had really hoped that we might get an application from a school that wanted to do some extra training for the playground aides. That we just thought it would be a wonderful place for really, if you had a really tuned in friendship mindset set of eyes out on the playground to try to get kids with and without disabilities, participating together in the different activities might have been very fruitful. Please keep in mind as parents, and also if there's any school personnel in here, what we need to do is go beyond just the, not just the teachers, but go beyond the teachers and look at who are some of the other support professionals in the system that might be able to further the goals. Makes a lot of sense, I think, for us to think about doing some emphasizing, if we want to create friendships, cooperative activities versus competitive activities in the school system. I kind of like this slide, by the way. I don't know how it might be in your different school districts, but I know that there are a lot of families who are simply, both parents are working, and they are simply not able to be at home when their sons or daughters are not able to be in school, in the classroom itself, and are having to learn remotely. And a number of local communities, YMCA's, and other organizations like that, are the places where right now the kids are going, and they're doing some of their after school stuff there. And it's kind of neat that they have the opportunity then not only to plug in on their devices during the time when they're supposed to be online with learning with school from these these community settings. But then when school takes a break, there are other opportunities they can do where they can be engaged in different kind of activities. But the more that people can be in cooperative versus competitive activities, the more opportunities that gives our sons and daughters with disabilities a chance, to shine and show what it is they can do, and create an opportunity to be identified by others as competent and likable individuals. Another thing we talk a lot about in human services, and not as much, I think, in some of the other disciplines, is valued roles. And it's really important to think that there are certain roles that we have in our communities that if people are in those roles, they are looked at by others as being more competent, more valued, they more want to spend time with them. So when school was in session, if somebody was, selected by the teacher to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, that person could be identified by their classmates as, boy, that's really good. There's a lot of other roles, I think. And again, I would encourage people because especially during this time of pandemic, please put in the chat box or the Q&A, what are some of the other roles that you can think of that might be ones that your sons or daughters could take part in, whether it's virtual or whether they're in class that day, that might help other students see them in a better light. Some other things that have been suggested, I know some schools not only do a Pledge of Allegiance, but there's somebody that marched down to the principal's office, for a different reason than I used to be marched down to the principal's office, but then they were asked to read the school's mission over the loudspeaker to all of the other classes. That could be a very valued role. It has been suggested that for those classrooms in which there may not be quite enough people quite enough teachers to help, if a teacher is trying to teach kids in the classroom and then kids on the computer at the same time, and trying to keep track of those kids that are online and who's raising their hand or has a question or whatever, that's really tough for the teachers. So one of the roles that a student might have would be to alert the teacher if there's somebody online that waves their hand or somehow wants to contribute or to the conversation or may have a question. So I think that's that's a kind of role you might want to do. And I think we want to really keep our eye open as well for, are there some things that our sons or daughters do that might at times be misinterpreted by other folks, but could actually end up being very positive things, very valued roles for folks. And I'm going to show you a brief video clip, and I hope you'll be able to hear it when I do this. But I thought is kind of cute. So let me get this. Let me see if this will show up.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me, though, was when I was about 10 years old, and I was in school, and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." And so I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me and he yelled. And he said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me, and I will never forget it. So I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. And he walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. I want to talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "Now, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." And he asked, he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." And from that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me and he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I think I'm always moved by that. And it reminds me a little bit, shared with you my son Luke's slide near the beginning of this. And when he was very young, and he was always, kind of wandering around the house and insisting on us doing our recycling to a degree that was sometimes annoying. And it was kind of nice to know there, again, when he was 10 years old, that we could um, take that passion of his, which seemed kind of quirky and a little bit weird for somebody that young, and turn it into an opportunity for him to connect and be appointed to an official recycling committee, which, by the way, the benefits for being connected can really go on and on. And where that drummer went on and that became his life isn't quite as dramatic. But our son Luke, because of that connection when he was young with the recycling committee, he ended up with a summer job just before college, working for our local highway department, which manages the recycling site in our town. So he met other people. So the benefits, of making those kind of connections are really important. So think about valued roles. Another important thing that we need to think about in terms of trying to help make sure that we connect our kids with and disabilities, this technology and social media. It relies, education now and social connections rely incredibly heavily on this. And so we've got to make sure that everyone has the necessary equipment to connect. And for our kids with disabilities, that might involve having to make sure that they've got extra kinds of applications and devices that they can operate effectively and efficiently with folks. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff at all, but it occurs to me that there might be some devices that some of our kids with disabilities need, that in order for them to really efficiently communicate with some of their peers without disabilities, that some of those same apps have to be available to the kids without disabilities. That's a level of discussion we need to have, because boy, what a lonely time it's going to be for some of our kids if they cannot have that contact. It's really important that we teach people some online rules and etiquette. Because there's a lot of ways that people can get lost in that. Got to make sure that as parents that we recognize the reciprocity that's part of friendships, and that we do whatever we can so that there's both a responding to people as well as inviting people to participate. And I know as a parent, sometimes it was excruciatingly painful to have all the invitations coming from our end or our son's end and not much coming back from the other from the other side. And so we need to make sure that other parents and families, kind of understand the situations that we're in. A simple thing, we want to make sure that our students, if they are online as well as in class, that they are looking their best. That unfortunately, the appearances do make a difference for folks. So we've got to make sure that people are, and when I say looking their best, I also mean looking sort of appropriate for the moment. If everybody else that goes to the school and is in that person's peer group is a flannel shirt crowd, then flannel shirts are the thing to do. We want to make sure that even when we try to emphasize ways to have our students stand out as individuals, we also want to make sure that they fit in as much as they can with the group. It's also one of the things that could be interesting, I think, is if your son or daughter is spending a lot of time online, is that you might want to figure out a way of setting up their background so it reflects who they are in a very positive way that could be engaging and inviting to some of their peers without disabilities. I just happen to be in a room where I'm really big into canoeing. There's a poster next to my canoe paddle that shows the Taunton Wild and Scenic River, which my son helped get designated by President Obama some years ago. It's one of the nation's wild and scenic rivers. So just little things like that to tell a little bit about the personality of who they are. But again, in a positive way. If you've got a high school kid, a high school guy, you probably don't want the background to be My Little Pony. Even if he likes My Little Pony, I would suggest that's not the best way to make connections with. So make sure that the technology and social media stuff is, that you really pay some attention to that. I really think, and we do as a project, that going old school might be really helpful too, during these times. That the idea of actually writing handwritten letters, to friends or acquaintances, or at least sending personal friendly emails back and forth, and not just the short little text, even if that's the way to do it. Had an interesting discussion actually this morning. We're trying to help, it's actually with an older group, adults, of what can we do as we're heading into the holidays to help, to help people stay connected. And one of the thoughts that was bandied about was, well, why don't we help people send Christmas cards? And instead of just going out and buying a stack of Christmas cards, why don't we, go on to, one of the many different kind of websites that there are out there, so that people could customize a Christmas card that would show your son or daughter in a really sort of an inclusive and positive way, and then help them address and send those things out to people over the holidays, and send them out early enough that maybe it'll prompt some replies to come back to them, and they can do some backing and forthing during these times when actually physically being involved might not be very helpful. I remember back in the olden days, the pen pals. That may be something like that. Maybe something you'd want to encourage your son or daughter to become involved with. I think it's going to be also very important that if we are going to be wanting kids with and without disabilities during these still highly isolated times to stay connected, we need to make sure that we as parents, and sometimes us as, I'm sure that some of you on the calls may be grandparents as well, who are thrust into a situation of having to be more supportive and stuff. That we need to support some of the learning from home. And again, the question would go, is there enough proper equipment and online access? Are there more and more people of my generation and older who are not comfortable with this kind of stuff? Matter of fact, our kids have to teach us, but we need to provide some tutelage, some of the parents and grandparents, so that they can help their children stay connected. Here's an interesting one too. What your schools allow contact information to be shared amongst families? I know in my wife's school, it's purely voluntary. Obviously, the school itself cannot say, here's a list of the emails and home addresses and telephone numbers of all of your child's classmates. But each parent, you know, can be asked, do you mind having your name and contact information on a list so that families from other families of students in your son's or daughter's you know, class can be in touch with you. And that one of the things that might want to happen in that kind of consideration, if that's happening, is maybe it's important to figure out a good way and a respectful way of sharing some of the disability related information about your son or daughter with the parents or grandparents to help make sure that they understand that maybe the information has to be sent in a different way. I know in my wife's school that the students themselves are taught, you know, that there's a lot of disability awareness stuff that goes on. They use a project called I Care, which has you know, a huge library of books about different disability conditions, and it's set up, it's age appropriate. There's over 50 volunteers that come into the school districts that are using this and read the appropriate stories in the classroom to the kids. But we may need to do something like that to help make parents and grandparents more aware of stuff too, if they are going to be in a position where they are going to be helping to make and sustain some of the connections that are going on. So final thoughts, because I've been asked to tie this up at about 1/4 of, which I think is just about now. As I just want to, and then we'll do question and answers, and I think Carrie will be moderating that. Is despite widespread awareness of the importance of friendships, students with and without disabilities still infrequently develop the kind of friendships that we're talking about, even in inclusive settings. It takes a lot of work. We have generations of us versus them that we are still contending with, even in our school settings. So I really encourage, we all have to believe that the people, in this case, other students in schools for our sons and daughters, if given the invitation and the opportunity, would want to be involved. And so I think it's very important that we have that mindset of friendships and that we support each other to make sure this stuff happens. And please don't let the pandemic, which is already slowing down so many things, don't let it derail efforts to make sure that your sons and daughters have the rightful place, the fully inclusive place in their schools. I want to thank you very much for your time. Here's just a few resources. People who wish to get in touch with me, please do. Our Widening the Circle website, which is on this. And again, you'll be getting all these slides from Carrie, right, Carrie?
Yes, yes, I'll be sending them out right after.
Great. And so, you know, please go in and poke around on our website. And I'd be more than happy if people have specific kind of questions, you know, after this this little event is over and wish to be you know, get directly in touch with me, I would welcome that as well. So thank you very much for your time. I wish I could have seen you. Bye, everybody. And I'm ready for any kind of questions if there are any, Carrie.
Sure, yeah, we do have a question in the Q&A. Suggestions for college students to make friendships while being completely virtual.
Wow. Well, part of what I would want to, part of what I think would be important to know is the college student are there other students nearby? So for instance, if this was a college student, I live right near Bridgewater State University, has just FYI, as one of the colleges and universities in Massachusetts that has the inclusive concurrent enrollment initiative, where students with intellectual and developmental been attending classes for quite some time. And several years ago, it piloted its first residence so that there were students with intellectual and developmental disabilities who weren't just attending classes, but were in residence in the regular college dorms. And most of the students at Bridgewater come from Massachusetts, and many of them are in close proximity. So if they went all virtual, and if your son or daughter was actually in a situation where they were able, where they had some of their classmates who were also in the same communities, that suggests a number of things besides purely virtual kind of connections. So we've seen picture. There was a slide I had right near the beginning of this that showed two young men who were throwing a baseball across to each other across a wide open backyard, and they are both college age kids. So that there are, I think, are some opportunities for for people to still gather in in separate ways like that. Obviously, there's I don't know what the interests of your son or daughters are, and if there were any clubs that the school was operating, but some of the colleges and universities are still doing some of their college clubs and stuff, online. So if people were involved in yoga or chess, I just finished watching the Queen's Gambit, on Netflix. That's why chess pops into mind. But if there were activities like that that people that your son or daughter might have been involved with, if they were in college, then I think they might be able to still connect on some of that. If your question was really just I don't know if the question was if the person was actually in college or just college age, Carrie. So that's why I'm a little stuttering on this question too. So, but again, I would look at ways to try to stay connected through things that were college, that particularly college oriented, college sponsored, with the hope that when classes are able to resume in real time and people are going back, they will not have lost some of the impetus, that they'll still be able to reconnect. One of the golden rules that we've been preaching about here is if people, let's use the Zumba example. If somebody was very involved locally in Zumba, pandemic hit, and their Zumba class stopped, is don't go back and just do an anonymous Zumba class that's being shipped over the airways from California, but try to find a local place that is offering online Zumba so that when the pandemic is over, you'll have a local real place that you can go to and maybe catch up with people, in real time.
Great. All right. Any other questions? You can either chat them in or put them in the Q&A box. Give it a minute or so. So while I'm checking now to see if there's any other questions, I wanted to thank Jim for a great presentation, and thank you for attending today. We have live streamed this on Facebook, and I checked it out during the webinar, and I think we had 5 shares, which is awesome. So I appreciate you all hopping on today. I'll be sending the slides shortly, and thank you, and stay well and stay safe. And I hope everybody has a good holiday season.
Thank you, Carrie.
Okay. Thank you all. Take care.